Listen closely, because what we're covering in today's explainer is literally a life-saving medical briefing. If you're in your 60s or beyond, I need you to understand that the standard everyday wellness advice you've been getting, it's just no longer enough. Not even close. Today, we're diving into a highly authoritative, incredibly urgent presentation of the clinical oncology protocols developed by Dr. Richard Ben. We're drawing on his 27 years of clinical oncology experience, along with some seriously rigorous epidemiological data, to give you an uncompromising biological strategy. We are going to strictly defend your cellular architecture against age-related mutation and disease.
Right out of the gate, I want you to focus on this staggering statistic: 61%. And look, this isn't some abstract hypothetical theory. This figure comes directly from a massive 20-year longitudinal study out of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, published in JAMA Oncology. They tracked over 135,000 adults. The data gives us a categorical, undeniable conclusion. Strict adherence to a specific cluster of daily biological interventions reduces your overall cancer risk by up to 61%. We are literally talking about the difference between a fatal diagnosis and survival.
So how do we actually get that reduction? We have to execute a strict 5-phase clinical triage protocol. We'll be walking through the age 60 biological deficit. Phase 1, toxin elimination. Phase 2, immunosurveillance. Phase 3, metabolic modulation. Phase 4, genomic protection. And finally, Phase 5, the master lever.
All right, starting with part 1, the age 60 biological deficit, or what we clinically refer to as the cellular proofreading collapse. Think of it like this. In a healthy, youthful baseline, your cells basically have an optimized, hyper-efficient proofreader. This DNA mismatch repair system constantly scans your DNA for replication errors and fixes them instantly. But as we enter that high-risk senior demographic, we slam into an unavoidable anatomical reality. You actually experience a severe 30 to 50% decline in the efficiency of these mismatch repair enzymes. Just when your body has accumulated decades of cellular wear and tear, your primary genetic proofreader just starts to fail. And that leaves your genome incredibly vulnerable to mutations.
That brings us to Phase 1, toxin elimination, which is all about immediately arresting cellular decay.
Your very first mandate is an immediate, non-negotiable halt to eating ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. Now, you might be wondering why it has to be a total halt. It comes down to advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These are highly toxic inflammatory compounds that are generated the second you consume industrial food formulations. Using stark clinical terms here, these AGEs act like biological shrapnel in your body. They aggressively bind to and physically paralyze your already depleted DNA repair enzymes. And I absolutely must emphasize this. This damage happens completely independently of a patient's weight or BMI.
If you want empirical proof, just look at the data from the National Cancer Institute. It reveals the real-world devastation of this biological shrapnel. Ultra-processed food consumption directly drives massive increases in mortality. We are looking at a 28% spike in overall cancer mortality. Plus, there's a 32% increase in colorectal cancer risk and a 19% increase in breast cancer risk. When you eat this stuff, you aren't just eating empty calories. You are actively disabling your body's genetic spell checker.
But here is the good news. Cellular plasticity remains, as long as we intervene correctly. Take a look at the clinical case study of Sandra, age 58. Her inflammatory markers were critically high, basically presenting a prime environment for oncogenesis. So the intervention was incredibly strategic. She simply replaced exactly one ultra-processed item per meal with a whole food equivalent. No crazy extreme starvation diets. The result? Within 12 months, her C-reactive protein dropped by 44%, her interleukin-6 normalized completely, and a follow-up colonoscopy confirmed her precarious colonic mucosal inflammation was entirely reversed. Just removing that toxic load allowed her surviving enzymes to catch up.
Let's move on to Phase 2, immunosurveillance, restoring your natural defenses.
I really need you to absorb the gravity of this number right here. 70%. The University of Chicago delivered a very grave warning. Sleeping fewer than 6 hours for just one single week obliterates your natural killer, or NK cell activity, by an astonishing 70%. Natural killer cells are the elite assassins of your immune system. They're the ones hunting down early-stage cancer cells. But their production is entirely dependent on those deep, slow-wave sleep phases, which, unfortunately, naturally drop by 50% as you age.
To reverse this catastrophic vulnerability, we have to implement rigid sleep hygiene.
Consider the clinical protocol prescribed to Robert, age 63. Step 1 is the absolute linchpin, a strict anchor wake time. By waking up at the exact same time every single day, 7 days a week, you stabilize your circadian rhythm. Then, you combine that with total environmental darkness after 9 p.m., a rigid 67-degree Fahrenheit bedroom temperature to force core cooling, and targeted magnesium glycinate supplementation. By strictly enforcing this protocol, Robert doubled his deep slow-wave sleep and boosted his operative NK cells by a verified 38%.
Now for Phase 3, metabolic modulation. This is where we halt the tumor fuel.
We've got to understand this exact molecular battlefield. On one side, we have IGF-1, or insulin-like growth factor 1. Now, in your youth, this actually builds tissue. But over 60, if it stays elevated because of a sedentary lifestyle, it acts as a highly dangerous tumor fertilizer. On the opposing side is the p53 protein, widely known as the guardian of the genome. It's your cellular emergency brake, stopping malignant growth in its tracks. Our mandate here is simple but crucial. Drain the IGF-1 fertilizer and forcefully activate that p53 brake.
We achieve this through purposeful metabolic movement. Actually, scratch that. Notice I did not use the word exercise. Consider Eleanor, age 71. She was dealing with severe osteoarthritis, so strenuous gym sessions were medically out of the question. Instead, her protocol was a 20-minute brisk walk immediately post-meal, paired with 5 minutes of pacing for every hour of sitting. This highly targeted mechanical intervention suppressed her post-meal glucose spikes by 33% and triggered a massive 23% drop in circulating IGF-1. We literally withdrew the fuel supply from any potential malignancies.
All right, Phase 4, genomic protection, specifically focusing on the cortisol-BRCA axis.
Here we are dealing with the insidious, clinically severe impact of chronic psychological stress on your genetic architecture. When you carry a high allostatic load, which just means chronic persistent stress, your bloodstream is constantly flooded with cortisol. This excess cortisol directly suppresses your BRCA DNA repair genes, and at the exact same time, it upregulates the NF-kappa B pathway. This is a lethal genomic cascade, folks. NF-kappa B literally acts as molecular armor, instructing mutated precancerous cells to resist apoptosis, that's programmed cell death, and survive our immune defenses. Your stress is essentially protecting the tumor.
Treating this requires immediate physiological intervention, not just psychological counseling. Look at the non-negotiable 12-minute genomic reset prescribed to David, age 66. It's the 478 diaphragmatic breathing protocol. You inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and execute a prolonged 8-second exhale with an audible whoosh sound. That 8-second exhale mechanically stimulates the vagus nerve. Practiced for just 12 minutes daily, it dropped David's salivary cortisol by 26% and successfully stripped away that NF-kappa B armor from his precancerous cells.
And that brings us to Phase 5, the master lever, autophagy.
The word autophagy literally translates to self-eating. It's this profound, deeply ingrained survival mechanism where your healthy cells dismantle, digest, and recycle damaged components, misfolded proteins, and precancerous mutations. But here is the critical failure point for most of us. This deep internal cleanup cycle is only triggered by 13 to 16 hours of continuous fasting. Because the modern adult maintains a constant 15 to 16-hour eating window, just grazing from morning until night, this life-saving mechanism is catastrophically shut down. So the cellular garbage simply piles up.
Check out this clinical trial data from the University of Alabama because it completely proves the biological power of restricting your feeding window. They looked at adults aged 55 to 70 utilizing a 14-10 protocol. That means 14 hours of fasting and a 10-hour eating window. The results are just staggering. 0 calorie counting, 0 pharmacological compounds, yet we see a massive 37% reduction in oxidative DNA damage and a 41% increase in tumor suppressor gene expression. The body heals itself when it's given the physiological silence to do so.
To make this undeniably concrete, let's look at this clinical outcome from Dr. Ben's files regarding Michael, who is 61. He had a history of precancerous polyps. By strictly limiting his feeding window from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., his follow-up colonoscopy showed complete resolution of the low-grade dysplasia. By just restricting nutrient availability for 14 hours a day, he forced his body to literally digest its own precancerous colonic cells. It is a flawless defense mechanism.
Okay, let's synthesize this entire clinical protocol into 5 military precision actionable steps. 1. Replace exactly 1 ultra-processed food item per meal to stop paralyzing your DNA repair. 2.
Enforce an anchor wake time to secure the deep sleep that builds your natural killer cells. 3. Walk for 20 minutes immediately post-meal to suppress the IGF-1 tumor fertilizer. 4. Practice 12 minutes of 4-7-8 breathing daily to drop cortisol and unshield mutated cells. And 5. Implement a 14-10 time-restricted eating window to activate the autophagy cleanup crew. I repeat, these are not casual wellness tips. They are mandatory biological replacement therapies for the aging body.
I'm going to leave you with this grave challenge to audit your life today. Which of these 5 critical survival pathways are you compromising daily under the fatal assumption that your body still holds the resilience of its youth? Modern convenience is actively dismantling your cellular architecture. It is entirely in your power to reclaim your biological destiny today, but you have to take the first step. Start tonight. Thank you for joining me in this vital explainer.